Hi, this is Renata Ago from International Wellness Institute Europe. I would like to talk about my sports rehabilitation course, which is approved by National Academy of Sport Medicine, US, American Council on Exercise, US, Prime Physio UK, and International Wellness Institute Europe. Sports rehabilitation course is running in 8 countries around Europe and Asia at the moment. It's great for physiotherapists, strength and conditioning coaches, and personal trainers who would like to get deeper understanding in sport injuries, sports rehabilitation, and who would like to work with athletes who got injured and the athlete would like to get back to the high performance level. Today we will go through a couple of shoulder stabilization techniques. One of the most important things is what you have to understand during the sport-specific movement. Basically, one of the most important part is the thorax. If your athlete is overhead athlete, which means there is a shooting or throwing movement or even swimming movement during the sport-specific movement, everything starts from thorax. And if there is not enough flexion extension in the thorax or not enough rotation in the thorax, that basically could be a reason of the repeated shoulder injury. It doesn't matter it's an anterior shoulder instability, it's an impingement syndrome, it doesn't matter at the moment. The most important thing for us is basically your athlete came out from the successfully finished physiotherapy, and now your athlete with you, and you have to prepare your athlete up to the high performance level. During the course we will go through all hundreds of exercises, and I will show you how you will be able to stabilize the whole shoulder line area, and then different kind of high performance exercises. So first of all, let's start with the thorax. As I told you earlier, flexion and extension extremely important in thorax. The second one is the place of the scapula. The scapula has to be enough stable and enough mobile. One more thing, let's talk about the kinetic chain. As I'm sure you know, the ankle has to be mobile, the knee has to be stable, hip has to be mobile, lumbar spine has to be stable, and now coming the thorax, which has to be mobile, flexion, extension, and also the rotation. So all the shooting and throwing movement start from the hip, because the hip is generate the power, then the all power is going all the way up through the core stabilizers, and basically if the thorax is not enough, there is not enough rotation or flexion extension in the thorax, that's kind of like an energy leak, which first of all basically decreasing the performance, and then the second level basically can be a reason of later injury. So that's why thorax is extremely important. And during the course we will go through all of the progression and regression in terms of thorax mobilization. The second step is we have to optimize the position of the scapula. We start with serratus anterior activation, and then the second one is basically the rhomboids and trapezius and the lower trapezius activation. The fourth step is basically the external muscles activation, external rotators. Then coming the proprioception. Proprioception is absolutely different than from normal population, because for athletes you have to follow first the open chain proprioceptive exercises and then the closed chain proprioceptive exercises, and the third one is again open chain proprioceptive exercise, because every single overhead athlete or the swimmers is working in open chain. And then coming the lumbopelvic hip complex activation, core activation, and then on the top of the OPT pyramid is power and speed. So basically on the basis, if we are talking about, for example, rotator cuff muscle injury or rotator cuff tendon injury, impingement syndrome and stuff, we have to start all these kind of conditions with the same step, with thorax mobilization. Actually, one more important thing, let's talk about the muscle chains. There is a superficial front line, superficial back line, and also deep front line, deep back line by anatomy trains Tom Myers. If you want to know more about the anatomy trains, Tom Myers' book is great. Today, I just would like to touch it. The superficial front line is basically, it contains the pectorials and also the latissimus dorsi. And then it's going all the way down through the intermuscular septum, and it contains all the forearm muscles down till the top of your fingers. The superficial back line, it starts with the trapezius, and then going down through the deltoid, and then intermuscular septum, forearm muscles, and also basically the top of your hand. So the superficial front line is coming all the way down, just on the front, and the latissimus dorsi. The superficial back line starts from the trapezius, going all the way down through intermuscular septum, forearm, and the top of the hand. The deep arm line is also extremely important, because deep arm lines contains the rotator cuff and also trapezius and the biceps. If you want to know more about this, please read the Anatomy Trains book. So, let's start with the thorax mobilization. First, I would like to ask one of my colleagues to lay down and bend one of your knee, please. Palms behind your head. If you type thorax mobilization into YouTube or to Google, probably that's the first exercise what you will see. But the evil is always in the details. Why is this foam roller here? What's happening in the diaphragm or in the core stabilizers? What about breathing? So all these little things is basically will create the whole exercise for you. The first one is, I will ask her to squeeze the knee against the foam roller, activate the adductor magnus, which is in co-activation with the gluteus maximus and the core stabilizers. So if there is no tension, if there is no pressure on the foam roller, then basically it's just a simple exercise. But if you really would like to create a thorax mobilization, you have to ask your client to squeeze the knee against the foam roller, activating the adductor magnus, which is in co-activation with the gluteus maximus and the core stabilizers. One more thing, breathing is also extremely important, because I asked my colleague to inhale, and during inhale, she's locking the all core stabilizers. So what we do is basically, we try to avoid any kind of compensation from the lumbar spine, because our goal is the thorax mobilization. So the first step, I have to ask her to keep pressure on the foam roller. There is an activation of gluteus maximus and core. Then I ask her to inhale, squeeze it down, lock your core, and now I ask her to create the thorax mobilization. One more thing, if you have overhead athlete with hypermobile shoulder, then you are not allowed to start with this exercise. You have to start with proper rhomboids and trapezius activation. Absolutely same, knee press, then core stable, rolling the hand all the way around, squeezing the shoulder down, activate the rhombus and the middle and lower trapezius, and coming back down. So basically that's also a great muscle activation in case of hypermobile shoulder. The next one is great. That one was for the rotation. Please sit up and lay back down again. So now I just put the foam roller under the scapula. What I will ask her to keep both of the elbow together, very close to the face. I ask her to tilt the hip, create posterior tilt in the pelvis, squeeze the core, inhale, create a zip, a pretty nice closed core stabilizers, and then please lean back. Avoid any kind of stop that point and go back up. So basically create only pure thorax flexion extension rather than compensating from the lumbar spine. So that's two huge secret when you do any kind of thorax mobilization. In terms of the next step is the serratus anterior activation. Most of the time, I would like to ask my colleague to just do a simple press up position for me. Okay, feet together. Okay, and I ask her to create flying wings. Yeah, just keep doing it. Couple of repetitions, like 8 repetitions. Perfect. For flying wings, if you would like to give resistance for her, then I would like to put a simple band around her shoulder. Obviously, most of the athletes won't be able to activate the serratus anterior. We're gonna start on against the wall, then we will use different kind of unstable surface, and then we are going back down to the floor. For us, one of the most important thing is get the scapula back to the right place. The next one is the rhomboid, middle and lower trapezius activation. I'm sure you know hundreds of exercises, but in this case, if you're working with athletes, from the floor, please lie down on the front. From a simple rhombus and trapezius exercise, first of all, you have to do a switch on sequence test, which means one of my hand, just thumbs up, one of my hands should be just in the just between the spine and the scapula. The other one is just above the elbow, and I ask her to lift the arm up like this. Only the right one, please, not both. The right one up and take it back down. Actually, the rhomboids and the middle trapezius is active. It's perfect. It's 25% load, 50% load, 75% load, and 100 load. What we examine is there any pain? Because if there is pain, then it's on the scale, it's 0, obviously. If there is no power in it, no strength, then basically your athlete will get 1. If there is a power, but there is so many compensation in the hip or in the shoulder line, that's 2 on the scale, and your athlete will get 3 if everything is perfect and your athlete can manage the 100% load. And now coming the switch on sequence test. The first one, the rhomboids. The second one is the middle trapezius. Third one, the lower trapezius. And the posterior deltoid should be the last one. Usually it's gonna be other way around. Let's try. So first, one of my hand on the posterior deltoid, the other one is just between the spine and the scapula. I ask her to lift it up. Yeah, it's absolutely same for her. She's a gymnast, and actually the posterior shoulder was the first one, then the middle trapezius and the rhomboid is the second one. Let's see what's happening with the lower trapezius. Lift it up. Perfect. Okay. So basically, and again. Okay, so the first one was the posterior deltoids, the second one is the rhomboids, middle trapezius, and the last one is the lower trapezius. What does it mean for us? Basically, the risk of the injury is still on. So probably she had, for example, impingement syndrome before, but you have to examine the risk of the injury for the future. And in this case, she has a risk of injury because the posterior deltoid switched on first, and the rhomboids, middle trapezius, should be the first one, second one lower trapezius, and the third one is posterior deltoids. The other thing is, I'm sure you know hundreds of exercise on the floor, different kind of letters and stuff. You learn lots of during your courses and the university. But the moment we are working with athletes, which means if your athlete is coming up for the shooting movement, for a sport-specific shooting movement, they have to switch on rhomboids, trapezius, and posterior deltoid in the right sequence. So it's not enough if your athlete can do simple rhomboids and trapezius activation just in the floor. The second is in leaning position, the next one in standing position, and the last one gonna be just in the sport-specific movement. So you have to keep building up all the sport-specific movement and keep activating the right muscle group. So the first one was basically the myofascial release according to the posture and movement assessment. The second step was basically the thorax mobilization, flexion, extension, rotation. The next one was the serratus anterior activation with resistance. And now we are just on the rhomboids and trapezius activation on the floor, in kneeling position, standing position, and sport-specific position. And now coming the external rotators. Could you just come up? Most of the time, if you work with athletes, they keep doing these kind of exercises during the warm-up. But what you have to understand is basically, if you finish the thorax, if you finish the serratus anterior, and if you finish the rhomboids and trapezius, then the fourth step is the external rotators. And if you're working with normal population, that's still enough if you're working in 0 degree or 90 degree. But with athletes, extremely important to do proper progression and regression. What does it mean for us? Let me grab 2 dumbbells and I'll show you. With athletes, you have to start with 30, 30, 30. That's the name of the exercise. 30 degree abduction, 30 degree flexion, 30 degree internal rotation. And why 30? Because till 30 degree, the supraspinatus still can help for your athlete. So it's external rotation in 30, 30, 30. And then you have to carry on in 0 degree. And then you are going up till 90 degree. And then you are getting in 90, 90 degree. And then coming the PNF arm work, which means I will ask my colleague to grab the tube here. I just have to grab the tube from fully internal rotation. It's going up. Could you just follow my movement? External rotation from fully internal rotation, it's going up to external rotation. That's called PNF. So basically, from the hip, it's going all the way up in 180 degree, and we try to keep touch every single degree. From fully external rotated position to fully externally rotated out position. And we do other way around. Why is it important? Because if your athlete grab the ball, catch the ball, they have to swing it. So it's not enough if you keep doing different kind of external rotation. It's not a proper preparation for the sport-specific movement, and that's all this sports rehabilitation about. Prepare your athlete to the proper functional sport-specific movement. And when you finish it, so now your scapula on the right place and your rotator cuff is enough strong to keep the head of the humerus just in the center, then you can go to proprioception. Open chain proprioception, one of my favorite, could you just give me the softball please? One of my favorite is basically just a simple water field softball. It's pretty cheap, but extremely important, especially for athletes. You can do open chain proprioceptive exercises for the shoulder even. Just a simple dead bug position. Or you can hold, for example, kettlebell bottom up, also great for open chain proprioception, and then coming some closed chain proprioceptive exercises, which could be a simple tapping or walking. I'm sure you know hundreds of these. But the last one is, can I just have one of the cushion, please? The last one is also an open chain exercise, proprioceptive, when you are holding the water field ball and you just preparing the shooting movement or preparing the swimming movement. It's absolutely up to the type of the sport. So open chain, closed chain, and open chain again. If you do these kind of exercises with football, for example, you switch on the core, right? And then you have to go to lumbopelvic hip complex activation, which is, for example, standing on the unstable surface and keep doing some kind of external rotation. The most important thing is, in shoulder sports rehabilitation, to follow a certain order. First of all, you have to understand what's the meaning of the sport-specific movement, what's the meaning of the superficial front arm line, superficial back arm line, deep arm lines. And then you have to start the whole procedure on the first place with myofascial release. The second one is the thorax mobilization, flexion, extension, rotation. The third one is serratus anterior activation against the wall or just on the floor. And then keep doing the trapezius and rhomboids activation, external rotators, proprioception, build it up till the sport-specific movement. So the most important thing is there are so many little steps which is basically build on each other, but maybe your athlete is not ready to do the same level from each steps. So you have to find out which is the right progression, and that basically the third day of my course is all about this. I will show you hundreds of exercises, how you will be able to create a proper progression and regression in certain order in terms of shoulder injury. So if you're working with overhead athlete or with swimmers, or with any kind of athlete who's doing some kind of shooting or throwing movement, this course is for you, because you will be able to see how you can do sports rehabilitation and prevention, which is also extremely important for you as a coach. So if you like this masterclass, then please come to my course. See you there soon. Bye-bye.